Ginet the Mishnah on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Continuing halachas of the languages the person uses in a neder, what's included, what's not included. Hanoidim and atmarim. A person makes a neder not to eat dates. Mutter b'dvash tmarim. He's allowed to eat honey, which is called dvash tmarim, honey of dates. But nevertheless, the lashon of tmarim does not include the honey and that comes from the dates, even though people refer to it as dvash tmarim. Mr. Vaniyas, if a person says he's not going to eat the grapes that grow late in the season, Stavanius is that they come already in the fall, in the winter, and they don't fully ripen. Mutter b'chaymitz Stavanius. He's allowed to drink from the vinegar that comes from these late grapes, because he didn't mean the vinegar. He meant Stavanius, those grapes themselves. The Ran actually asks on this halacha of the Mishnah here, that how does this fit with what we learned before? The first, where was it? In Daf Nun Aleph. It said before the Mishnah regarding a person that made a neder not to drink milk, and the Mishnah there said that the way of the milk, if people refer to it as the kum de chalba, the way of the milk, it's going to be included in the neder as well. Right, so over here it says we make the neder not to eat from dates, and people refer to the date honey. Nevertheless, it's going to be mutter to eat. So the Ran gives two answers. One answer the Ran says is there's a big difference. But when it comes to that whey, to that liquid that you separate from the milk, nothing changed of it. It's the milk itself. It's just the cheesy part of it and the watery, the liquidy part of it just separated. But it's really the same liquid. It's the same thing. So therefore, it's included in the neder over there if people refer to it as the whey of the milk. Over here, though, the honey that comes out from the dates or the stavani is the wine that comes out of the grapes. It's something that changes. It's just the juice. It's just the honey that comes out. So that's not included even if people use that lashon. Another point that Ran says is when people refer to the whey that comes from the milk as the whey of the milk, the fact that people call it that way shows that it's still part of milk. It still means it's called milk. When people refer to dvash tmarim as dvash tmarim, it's not because there's any element of dates in it. The reason people call it that way is because they want to distinguish between this honey and the honey that comes from bees. So it's just it's a lashon that's being used just to distinguish, but it's not really, it doesn't have any element of dates in it. So therefore it's not included in the neder. The Mishnah continues, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, Kol sheshem teldasai kruya alav. Anytime that you have something, that a telda, an offspring, or a derivative that comes from something, like what we spoke about, the honey, or the wine, or the vinegar, and the source of where it comes from is still called upon it, like the case over here, it's called date honey, or it's called the vinegar of these grapes. So, v'noida menu, you made a neder not to eat from the dates or from these grapes, asr, it will be asr. So he's arguing with the Tanakama. Both the dates itself are going to be asr, and the honey. So asr b'yotze menu, you'll be asr to eat even from the honey or the wine or the vinegar that comes out from it. The chachamim matirim. However, chachamim are matir. Chachamim say you are allowed to eat from it. Now the chachamim matirim, what are the chachamim referring to? So let's go straight into the Gemara. The Gemara asks a question. Chachamim haine Tanakama. It seems like the chachamim are saying the exact same thing as the Tanakama. Just like the Tanakama said that you're not allowed to eat the dates themselves, but you're allowed to eat the honey that comes from the dates. So Chacham is saying the same thing. So what's the difference? So the Gemara explains, the difference is the opinion that we learned here in Abraisa. Hadad Tanya, this that we learned in Abraisa here, Klal Ze'amid Abshim ben Elazar, this is the rule that Abshim ben Elazar said. Kol Shadarkai Lechoil, if it's something that it itself is edible, and v'derech hayetze mimenu lechoil, and it's also customary to eat what comes out from it. And what's the example for this? What our Mishnah spoke about, they're going tmarim udvash tmarim, dates, and the honey that comes out of the dates. So then the halacha is nadaboy, you made a neder not to eat from it. Aser b'yetze mimenu, so you're aser to eat not only from the dates, but you're not allowed to eat what comes out from it as well. This is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira in the Mishnah as well. So again, aser b'yetze mimenu. Nadar miyotze mimenu, if your neder was not to eat from what comes out of it, you made a neder not to eat from the honey of these dates, aser boy, so you're not allowed to eat not only from the honey that comes out of the dates, but you're not allowed to eat from the dates themselves. However, kol she'ein darkei lechel, if it's not customary for a person to eat the fruit itself that you made a neder from it, v'derech hayotze mimenu lechel, and it's only customary to eat what comes out of it, And what is this referring to? This refers to the second case of our Mishnah regarding these regarding the grapes, that grow late in the season. They grow already in the fall and the winter, and they never ripen properly. So these grapes are not really so edible. So people don't use the grapes themselves, but they're used to make vinegar from it. So then the halacha will be that if he made a neder, so then it'll only be aser to eat the vinegar that comes out of it, because that's the main thing that it's used for. Because the whole intention of this neder is only going on what comes out from it, because the dates themselves are not usually edible, so your neder does not go on that. That's the opinion of Rav Shimon ben Elazar, which argues on both opinions of our Mishnah. So what the Gemara means to say over here is, when it said in the Mishnah, the Chachamim matirim, what the Chachamim are saying is, a person that makes a neder not to eat from the Stevanias grapes, not to eat from the late in the season grapes, he doesn't mean to aser the grapes themselves, because they're not usually edible. He only means to aser the vinegar that comes out of those grapes. So the Tanna Kama said that you're not allowed to eat these grapes themselves, but you are allowed to eat the vinegar that comes out of them. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said both are not allowed. You're not allowed to eat the grapes themselves and also not the vinegar that comes out of it. When the Mishnah says Chachamim matirim, Chachamim are mata, he's arguing with both opinions. Chachamim are saying the grapes themselves, because they're not so edible, so therefore the neder doesn't go on that. People don't usually eat it, and therefore it's mutter to eat these late season grapes themselves. You're only not allowed to eat the chaimitz, the vinegar that comes out of it, because that's usually what these late season grapes are made for. A person makes a neder not to drink wine, mutter b'yein tapuchim. You'll be allowed to eat or to drink the wine that comes from apples, apple cider, because the word wine means wine from grapes. It's not apple cider. Menashem, and a person makes a neder not to eat oil, mutter b'shem shumshemen. He's allowed to eat sesame seed oil. Minadvash, he made a neder not to eat honey, did not spell out which type of honey, just said honey, mutter b'dvash tamarim. He's allowed to eat the honey from dates, because honey, stam honey, refers to honey from bees. Menachaimitz, a person makes a neder not to eat vinegar, mutter b'chaimitz tevaniyas. He's allowed to eat the vinegar that's made from these late season grapes, because a vinegar in those times at least was usually made from the regular wine, when you allowed it to wine turned into vinegar, but not from the late season grapes. Menakreishin, a person made a neder not to eat leek, mutter b'kaflutais. He's allowed to eat kaflutais, which is a type of leek, but it's different, it has a different name, so it's not the regular leek, it's not included in his neder. Minayerek, a person made a neder not to eat from vegetables, mutter b'yarkais asada. He's allowed to eat those vegetables that grow wild out in the field. Vegetables are usually planted in a garden, and that's what he meant when he said the vegetables. So those that grow wild out in the field, in a place that a person didn't plant them, so that's mutter to eat. Shushem levai, because it has another name to it. It's not the regular vegetables. It's called the vegetables of the field. So because it's not the regular vegetable has another name, so it's not part of the neder. So the Gemara Tanya, in a Braisa we learned that it depends on the place that you are. It depends what the custom is, what people usually eat. As we learned already before, when it comes to Nedarim, it goes according to the language that people use. So Hanaidim and Hashem in Beretz Yisrael, so the halacha that it's in the Mishnah is in Eretz Yisrael. A person that makes a neder not to eat oil, and he's in Eretz Yisrael, so then I say, mutter b'shem shumshemen. He's allowed to eat sesame seed oil. Because in Eretz Yisrael, most oil was olive oil. But v'asa b'shem zayis, and he's not allowed to eat the shem zayis. But in Bavel, he didn't have so many olives. So over there, the oil was a sesame seed oil. So in Bavel, asa b'shem shumshemen. Plain oil refers to sesame seed oil. Umutter b'shem zayis, and he's allowed to eat olive oil. If it's a place that people use both, they use olive oil and they use sesame oil, so then also bezeh. So when you say not to eat oil, that will actually include both. So the Gemara asks in this pshita, isn't this obvious? If people use both, so then obviously oil refers to both. Answers the Gemara, lo tzriche. So this is needed over here. The chiddush over here is the ruba min chad mistapkin, that most people use the oil from one of these types, whether the olives, whether the sesame seed oil. So mao the teime ezel basaruba. I would think that I follow according to what the majority is. Since the majority of people use one of them, that is what the language of the neder includes, and not what the minority of people use. Kamash malan, that's the chiddush over here, that we say that no, the language of the neder goes on both. So what's the chiddush of the Gemara over here? So the Gemara says, Safik Isura L'chumra. That over here in this case, because it's a Safik of a Isser, what is neder meant, we're going to be Machmer. So why taka we Machmer over here regarding the Safik of this Isser? So the reason is because the different Mefarshim say different reasons of what the pshat in this is. Either because if you have a Safik, his neder could have meant either this or that, it means only olive oil or sesame seed oil, so then you usually makel. But over here, because he may have meant both, you don't know, because the minority of people do eat the other type of oil as well, he may have meant both, so therefore we have to be machmer that it includes both. So this is one pshat in the Gemara, but there is another pshat in this Gemara. When the Gemara here says that there's raiv and there's the miyat, there's the majority and the minority, it doesn't mean that the majority of people eat one type of oil and the minority of people eat another type of oil. What it means is all people, most of the times, use one type of oil, and sometimes, 10% of the time, they use a different type of oil. But everybody does use this other type of oil sometimes. And therefore, that's the chiddush here, that it is neder includes even that type of oil that is used, even though it's only the minority of the time, but it still is used. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Haneider, maybe this is part of the Braise, going back before, continuing the Braise. Haneider min ayerek, a person makes a neder not to eat vegetables. So, our Mishnah said that it only refers to vegetables in the garden, but this Braise says it depends what time period this is. B'shar shnei shavua, if it's the other times of the 7 years of Shemitah, not Shemitah itself, but all other years. So then, also b'yarkis agina, like the Mishnah said, you won't be allowed to eat from the vegetables in the garden. But he's allowed to eat from the vegetables that grow wild out in the field. But when it comes into the year of Shemitah, it's the other way around. You're not allowed to eat from the vegetables that are growing wild in the field. Because in Shemitah year, you're not supposed to plant in the garden. So he's not referring to those vegetables that are there in the garden. In Shemitah, you have some wild vegetables that grow on their own outside in the field. That's what he must have been referring to, because that's the only vegetables that grows in this year. So therefore Shemitah is allowed to eat from those vegetables that are found in the garden. So on this, Rabbi Vo explains, Mishum Rab Chanina ben Gamliel, in the name of Rab Chanina ben Gamliel, this halacha of Shemitah, that the vegetables of the garden are not included in his neder, Lo Shanu, this was only said, Elo b'makoim, only in a place, She'ein mevi'in yerek mechutz la'aretz, where they don't import vegetables from chutz la'aretz. Vegetables, regular garden vegetables from outside Eretz Yisrael, la'aretz, to Eretz Yisrael. But if it's a place where they import vegetables, regular garden vegetables from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael, so then also, so then when he made his neder, it will go not only on the wild vegetables that grow out in the field, but also those garden vegetables that are imported from chutz la'aretz. So this the Gemara says, Kitanoi. This importing the vegetables from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael is a machlokes tanaim, whether you're allowed to import. Because there's a brayse that says as follows: Ein mevi'in yerek min chutz la'aretz la'aretz. You're not allowed to import the vegetables from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. Rab Chananya ben Gamliel, however, Rab Chananya ben Gamliel said, mevi'in yerek min chutz la'aretz la'aretz. You are allowed to import vegetables, garden vegetables from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara asks, my time with demand mevin. What would be the reason why you shouldn't be allowed to import vegetables from chutz la'aretz? What's the problem? So the Gemara explains the reason is Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah said the reason is mishum gush, because when you bring those vegetables, it comes along sometimes with these pieces of earth, and the pieces of earth Chachamim will geyser that the earth in chutz la'aretz is tameh. One of the gzeiros of Chazal that is tumah in the offer of chutz la'aretz. So because there's a tumah, you don't want to bring that tumah into Eretz Yisrael, and people will become tameh from it. So therefore, the geyser that you're not allowed to bring the vegetables from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. But Rab Chananya ben Gamliel was not concerned about this. Rab Chananya ben Gamliel held that usually when you bring the vegetables, the earth doesn't come along. You just bring the vegetables. So therefore, it's allowed to import them from chutz la'aretz. Very interesting.
Is not only Shemitah, all years.
Correct. Right. So machlokes tanaim b'chlal.
But the machlokes over here is only when it's not the Chanayim machlokes, but the Mishnah.
Before the Braisa before was regarding Shemitah. Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Does that mean that Truma is anything out in earth?
The earth outside Eretz Yisrael, Chacham will geyser tum on it, and there's actually two reasons for this. One reason is because the Goyim that live in chutz la'aretz, so it's customary that they bury even in places without any signs that there's a burial spot there, and therefore you can never know where there could be a burial. There's not one reason. Another reason is because they wanted Yidden to live in Eretz Yisrael. There's a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael that Yidden should stay in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore they were geyser on Chutz La'aretz that it should be tummy. Okay, Zok Heilige Mishnah, min hakruv. A person made a neder not to eat from cabbage. Aser be'asparagus. He's not allowed to eat asparagus. I don't know if this is what we call today asparagus. I don't think so. It's a different. It's another type of cabbage. That's the pshat that most Rishonim say. But there are some Rishonim that say, the Rambam says that asparagus actually refers to the water that when you boil cabbage in it, that water that has now this taste of like a cabbage drink is called asparagus. So what it's saying is that you'll be asked to drink from that water that the cabbage was cooked in. It's the Rambam's pshat. Mina asparagus. If your neder was not to eat from the asparagus, mutter bekrov. That does not include the krov, the cabbage itself. Mina grisen. A person made a neder not to eat from grisen, from different kinds of beans. Aser b'mikpeh. You're not allowed to eat from mikpeh, which is a bean stew. Right, so because, again, what? Pottage. Okay. Rabbi Yosi matter. However, Rabbi Yosi says that it is allowed. Grisen is one thing, mikpeh is another thing. It does not include, the lashon of grisen does not include the stew made from the beans. Mehena mikpeh, if a person makes a neder not to eat from the mikpeh, the stew, mutter begrisen. He's allowed to eat the grisen, doesn't include the beans themselves. Mina mikpeh, person makes a neder not to eat from this bean stew. Aser b'shum, you're not allowed to eat garlic. Why are you not allowed to eat garlic? So some say because the reason is because they would usually spice it with garlic. They would add garlic to it. So therefore, if you say mikpeh, that includes garlic because there would always be garlic in there. Others say because the reason is, I think that Anavir says, or others say that, or maybe it's in Mefarish, he says that the reason is because garlic was also usually made as a paste, similar to this mikpeh, similar to this stew, the way it was cooked, these beans that was like a thick, pasty dish. So garlic was also usually prepared in the same way. So people refer to mikpeh, and they when they say mikpeh, it includes this shum as well. But Rabbi Yosi matter. Rabbi Yosi says, no, mikpeh is mikpeh, garlic is garlic, it's not connected, it's mutter. Minashum, if the neder was not to eat from garlic, mutter b'mikpeh, you're allowed to eat from this stew that's made from the beans. Mina adashim, person made a neder not to eat from lentils. Aser ba'ashishim, you're not allowed to eat ashishim, which are the lentils when they're fried with honey and other ingredients. Rabbi Yosi mater mina ashishim. Rabbi Yosi says lentils does not include these ashishim. Different thing. Mater, sorry, don't read it together. Rabbi Yosi mater, Rabbi Yosi says it would be allowed. Mina ashishim, if your neder was not to eat from the ashishim, the way they are fried with honey, mutter ba'adashim, you're allowed to eat the lentils themselves that are not fried. Chita, chitin, sha'ani tayim. A person made a neder not to eat. He used a singular term, chita, wheat, and he said chitim, a plural term, wheat, that I will not taste from it. So aser behen, he will not be allowed to eat from the wheat, bein kamach, whether it's raw, whether it's still a flour, and he's going to eat it before it's cooked or baked, and bein apas, or whether he's going to eat it once it's made into a bread. So the pshat over here is chita that's used in a singular term refers to bread. Because once you make bread, so all those many kernels or many pieces become one piece of dough and then one piece of bread. So therefore it's that the singular term refers to the bread. Chitin, which is plural, that refers to the flour or to the grits or the flour that there is from these chitim that are plural. Similar, gris and grisin shanitayim. If we use the singular term saying bean or beans, many, that I will not taste from it. So the fact that he used both of these expressions, so asa behen, will not be allowed to use these beans, ben chayin, whether they're raw, when it's raw, so that's what the plural term refers to, the many beans, and bein muvishalim, and whether that's cooked, and it becomes like one piece, like one stew that it's cooked together. Rabbi Yehuda says, kainim gris oichita shanitayim. If a person's neder is that he's not going to eat a bean, or a wheat, using a singular term, so then, mutter lachas chaim. He's allowed to chew these beans or these kernels of wheat when they're raw. Right? Sometimes people would chew them. The Gemara actually brings in some places that this is you could use it for like a medicine to heal you. It's healthy. So the reason is because usually when a person chews these beans or these kernels of wheat, he doesn't chew one at a time. They're small, so you chew a few at a time. So therefore, the lashon chita in a singular term only refers to when you bake a bread out of it, but it doesn't refer to when you chew a few of them together. So the Gemara Tanya and Abraisa we learned that Reb Shimon Gamliel said, Chita sha'ani toyim, person that says, I will not eat wheat, singular lashon, so then asa lefais. He's not allowed to bake a bread, then eat a bread. Because, as I said, when you say a singular lashon, it refers to the bread that becomes like one dough and then one piece of bread. But you're allowed to chew pieces of kernels of wheat because there are many. It's not included in the singular term when he said chita, a wheat. If a person says chitim shani tayim, okay, mutalachas, chitim shani tayim. If a person says that it will not taste wheat, and he means plural wheat, not a wheat, but wheat plural, then asalachas, he's not allowed to chew the kernels of wheat, which are always chewed a few together. And he's allowed to bake a bread and eat from the bread because the bread is one piece of bread, and therefore the plural term does not refer to bread. Chitim shani tayim, like it said in our Mishnah, if you used both terms, the singular term and the plural term, so then also ben lachos, ben lefais. He's not allowed to chew the kernels of wheat, and he's also not allowed to break bread. The interesting thing that Mefarshim point out is over here, the Mishnah, the Brais here seems to be saying the same halacha like the Mishnah, but whenever the Brais talks about not eating bread, it uses the term lefais, not to bake bread. So some say what the Brais is trying to say is, when you make a neder, and the neder means not to eat bread, you shouldn't even be baking bread. Similar to halacha, like it says by a nazir, that a nazir that's not allowed to drink wine is not allowed to be walking near a vineyard, so he shouldn't come to drink the wine. Mm-hmm. So too over here, it's saying lefais, you shouldn't even be baking bread since you're not allowed to eat the bread. Mm-hmm. Weiter the Braisa says, Gris shani tayim, person's neder is that he should not eat a bean, singular term, so also lavashal, he should not cook and make the stew of these beans. That becomes one piece, and it's like a singular one thing. Umuter lachos, he's allowed to chew the beans, which are many. Grisin shani tayim, if he says the neder not to eat many beans, so then also lachos, he's not allowed to chew the many beans in his mouth. But umuter lavashal, he's allowed to cook the beans, which become one piece. Gris and shani tayim, he uses both terminologies, the singular term and the plural term, that he will not taste from it. So then, also ben levashel, ben lachos. He won't be allowed not to cook and not to chew from these beans because it includes both. Adron, Allah, Hamneidim, and Amavushal. This is the conclusion of the 6th Perek of Masechta Nedarim. Shabbos.